Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lessons in Product Management. I'm your host, John Fontenot, and today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Path to Product. Path to Product helps aspiring product managers gain the product management experience that they need to land their first product management role. If you're looking to get into product management, click the link in the show notes and get started at pathtoproduct.io. On today's episode, I got to speak with Eric Perkins, the Director of Product at Entrata. And what I love about our conversation is normally when I talk about paths into product management, we're trying to help aspiring PMs get to the job that they want. Well, in Eric's case, he actually had a really fast path into product leadership, which I think is really cool because once you get the role that you want, if you aspire to product leadership, which product managers are leaders, but if you aspire to that director, VP role, what can you learn from Eric's accelerated path that can help you put yourself on that path to product leadership even faster? And so that's why I'm really excited about this conversation. Eric drops a lot of really great knowledge bombs. He drops a lot of really great advice on how to make that transition smoothly, what he's learned in that transition, and what you could take away from it to apply to your own career if you are a product manager or once you become one. So with no further ado, here's the conversation I had with Eric. Hey, Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah, likewise.
So to kick things off for the listeners who may not know who you are, could you give a brief background on who you are, what you do, and what you're up to today?
Yeah, today I am the director of product at a company called Entrata, where the headquarters is based in Lehi, Utah. I'm currently in the ever traffic present town of Dallas, Texas, and I've been here for a couple months now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So recent transition into this director role. Is this your
Yeah.
first director role or?
Yes, it is. It is the first transition into true people leadership and first director role. And I mean, I've got to tell you, so far, the team here at Entrata is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I know you're familiar with Entrata building. I know you see it up there in your neck of the woods, but it's an unbelievable team we've got here for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, and for the listeners, me and Eric were joking the other day because when we met, I work at Lindia, which is literally across the street from the
Yeah,
Entrata HQ in Lehigh. So
it's awesome.
small world problems.
Indeed. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, glad to hear that things are going really good at Entrata.
Yeah.
Really curious to ask you a lot of questions. One, when I guess so now that you're a director, that there was
Yeah.
obviously a time in your career where you made a transition into product management. So let's jump in the Wayback Machine and go back to the
Yeah.
beginning. What were you doing before and kind of what got you interested and let's go from
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people probably have a similar story where they just fell into product management. I kind of like to think that, that happened to me as well. I think I also fell in love with it in the process, frankly. Yeah, the origin story of Eric, though, I worked at Apple. I was not an Apple product manager or anything like that. I was an Apple, I worked at the Genius Bar. Whenever you had a broken phone, if you're an Apple guy, you go to the back of the Apple store and you hand your phone to a specialist and they fix it, help you back up your phone, things like that. That was quite literally me for 3 years of my life. And it was a blast. I was there when the Apple Watch launched and it's on my wrist today, because of that whole experience. Um, but I left Apple to really, but frankly, have my weekends back. You know what I mean? Working in Apple retail can be a lot of fun, but you don't have Saturdays and Sundays. And, if you want to have a relationship with others outside of your work group, it's kind of difficult. So I went to a company called RealPage, and that's really where this product origin story begins, if you will. I went to a company called RealPage, which is ironically a competitor to Entrata today, but I got a lot of industry knowledge, which is what I think is what's really helpful in product management. I had a leader, which we'll probably talk about later, who told me it's a lot easier to teach product than it is industry experience. And that alone is so true. But went to RealPage for 3 years and change, and I actually went there for support. Literally whenever somebody called into RealPage, this is Eric. How can I help you? Supported their core products, supported everything from their accounting suite to the procurement to everything in between, from student and conventional housing. And RealPage, just for those listening, it's I guess it's a multifamily software product, right? They make a lot of software that maybe their leasing professionals at your apartment community might use to satisfy like residents moving in and moving out, all that. That's what RealPage did. Did that for 3 years. It was tier one support, tier two. Subsequently became, what they call platinum, where people would pay extra money to have a dedicated person, come in and they would say, we want somebody to teach us the project, or excuse me, teach us the software, teach us how to best use it to get the best business outcomes and understand like training our teams on how to use this. And I got to go all over the country doing that. And I did that in Orlando, New York, here in Texas, and met a lot of cool people. And that's as I'm building all this industry knowledge, not really thinking about product, I take the step over to a company that uses RealPage called CF Real Estate Services. They're no longer around, but they became Roscoe Property Management, or RPM Living, which is like the number 7 in the nation in multifamily now, which is, don't quote me on that, I might be wrong, but they're like number 7 now. And through that CF and RPM, Roscoe Property Management, I got to really put on a thinking cap. And I'm going to name drop someone, but Dixie was my leader over at RPM Living, she left and came back. But when she was there, she really, frankly, she gave me the encouragement and the space to really wear that product hat and really think about getting out of the monotony of, we've got a problem over here, go fix it. We've got a problem over here, go fix it, and start thinking about, all right, how do we want this organization to be ran in a long haul? How can we fix this for not only our team, but other teams, in the same process? And, that was a really instrumental moment of having Dixie kind of lead me to thinking that product mindset. And that's really where it began. But when Dixie left, I kind of felt a little shattered. I kind of gravitate towards leaders of that caliber. And when she left, I started poking around at vendors that were in the space of what we were doing and found this company called Jetty. And you may know Jetty. They're based out of New York. They are a deposit alternative company. They're a startup. They do some things dabbling in rent as well. And you can kind of see I'm staying within this multifamily space, but at the same time, I'm, growing my understanding as I'm going through this. And when I got to Jetty, it was startup culture, 80 people, let's rock. I am a product manager, the only product manager at one point. And, it was intense. The day that I got hired, less than a week later, my boss was gone. My senior product manager was gone. It was just me and an 80-person company reporting into no director, no SVP, no anything. It was reporting into the CEO and the C-level suite. And as a product person, you can probably understand, that is not the best environment to be successful, especially whenever you're a brand new product manager to a company and you have to say no to a CEO. So you learn by failing fast. And that's what I did a lot at Jetty. My first few months there, I failed and I failed fast. And, I got the reps in. Everybody needs the reps, and you're trying to take a product to market, and you got to understand what it took to get there and do that along the way with some great people and build great relationships. But I know I'm dragging this out, but lastly, like when I left Jetty, the last year that I was there, I had a great leader named Lori, who is to this day probably one of the best product minds I've ever had. And, her encouragement and her leading alone is the reason why I'm sitting here. I would not be a director of product without her. And I think that's super, super, super important that, you surround yourself with leaders that want to see you succeed and give you the space to succeed, right? As opposed to just doing the execution daily task and have the superhero hat on. And she gave me the space I needed to really understand what it took to be a true product manager. And I'll never forget that from Lori. Took a couple steps up the rung, and the rest is history. Now I'm at Entrata. I am the director now, and I've got 4 folks that roll up to me on the product team, and we're trying to change the game over here. And I just got to say, like the folks we have over here are incredible. And you probably noticed, like as I'm talking about this is it's all about people that lead you and want you to be better than you are, better than you currently are, and they see potential in you. And I wouldn't be a director of product today without those folks.
It's awesome. There's a lot of good stuff to unpack there.
Yeah,
I want to go back to the first transition. So you
sure.
were doing support work for Apple, then for RealPage.
Mhm.
Where did you get your first opportunity? Did you go straight from like the support role at RealPage into product at RPM, or was there an interim step? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, so whenever I left Apple to go to RealPage, that was one thing. But whenever I left RealPage and went through the CF and then subsequently RPM, it was just application support, right? That's what it was. And it was frankly just, all right, we've got a ticket come in, let's take this ticket. But as that role evolved, as we start acquiring more companies, we acquired like two or three companies in my time there. It became this is a lot more than just support. We've got to start thinking about business analysts. We've got to start working with our engineering teams. We've got to start working with, had a somewhat of a design team at RPM, not a lot. And I mean, at that point, it became we've got to expand our own knowledge set. So Dixie, myself, and a few others in the team really started talking about what it looks like to succeed, and we started defining those OKRs about what we want to do. And that's like that was all product at that point. The hat really shifted from I'm going to take these tickets to I'm going to be a product manager.
That's cool.
That's
So it was
cool.
like a natural evolution for the company, and your career kind of
Yeah,
evolved with it. It was like we have a need, and we think Eric can fill that need based on his position,
yeah.
and with a little bit of coaching, he can be successful in kind of this new role.
Absolutely. And it was like quite literally, I feel very blessed in a lot of ways because that was a perfect melting pot of my experiences, the leadership at the same time. We were all going through the same change together. It was very cool.
Yeah, I have a similar journey
Yeah.
where I was trying to transition. I was doing contract work for Intel, and I
Yeah.
was trying to get into product, and I was told like you're trying to transition roles and industries, do one. So I took a sales
Yeah.
job at a SaaS startup or SaaS firm, and I was actually about to leave that company when the senior PM was like, "Hey, we actually have a need for a UX researcher. I know you want to get into product, and you
Yeah.
talk to customers all day. Like, you want to try it out?" And so
Yeah.
yeah, business had a need, and I saw
Rest is history,
door
man.
opportunity. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's incredible. And I love stories like that because myself included, like I was not looking for a product management role. I had a company that took a chance on me. I had multiple companies that took a chance on me. And it really was just that natural evolution. And honestly, like I did some product things obviously at RPM towards the end of my time there. That's really when that hat came on. But like product management for me was like getting into a startup and fully doing it. You know what I mean? That was really where the experience came. And I don't think I would have gotten that opportunity at Jetty had it not been for those same people that were like, we have a need, and like it. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna move you over to this screen so it looks like I'm looking at you when I'm talking to you. There we go. That's a little better.
you're good. So, as you were going, like progressing through your career, it sounded like you had some great mentors and great leaders that were helping coach you. Like,
Absolutely.
what were some of I guess, the growth areas that you saw the most in your own career as you were kind of evolving into it and
Mhm.
like really getting your feet under you as a product manager? I guess maybe what are some of the things you didn't expect that you kind of learned along the way?
I think one thing in product that a lot of people maybe glaze over. I don't maybe glaze over is not the right term, but I think it's a lot more than just coming in here and we've got a problem. We're going to write a product requirements document, and when we're done with it, we're going to throw it over the proverbial fence, let engineering code it, and we're going to get it back. And I did that. I'm not I'm not casting a stone here. I totally did that, and it was a terrible experience for everybody on my team at the time. And I made a lot of people like upset, like, why are we doing it this way? I'm like, this is what product is, right? And that's not the case. And I think whenever you're doing that, I learned through experience that the sooner you can get people on the same page, and we've all heard this 1,000 times, but a lot of times it's not actually done. It's that I've got designers and engineers now that I circulate as much as possible, probably to the point that they're like, all right, please stop. Like that I want them to understand, because whenever we get to those opportunities where we're talking about our quarterly maps, we're talking about our quarterly roadmaps, we're talking about what we're doing in the upcoming sprints that's going to lead up to a problem to solve, they already know it. You know what I mean? It's not something that they've got to think about, oh, would this make sense? Like, no, they were exposed to it as early as possible. And I think that's one thing that I wish I would have done earlier in my career, is understand the value of other people's input, because I am not the only person who knows the right answer, the only right answer. So that would be my little piece.
Yeah, like Marty Kagan has that great book Empowered about how like
Yeah,
product leaders can empower product managers. But I think if you take it a step further and you say like what can product managers do to empower their team, and I think it's just that, right?
yeah,
Shared context, communication and collaboration early and often. And if you could like paint that vision, share the strategy, like this is where we're trying to get and why, and arm them with that context. Like
yeah,
I've seen that when I don't do that, there's like unnecessary tech debt, and there's like why didn't we think of this? And when I
absolutely.
do remember to do it, it's much better outcomes, better products, and a much more seamless development cycle.
Absolutely. And you hit on something, and the term product leader, I feel like a lot of times gets associated with director of product, SVP of product, CPO, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be. And I know it sounds a little cheesy, but it's like, especially at a startup, like a product manager, you can be the product leader there, especially if you're the one that's outlining the context, that's actually defining the business case that we're trying to solve for. There's a lot of opportunities there. And, we're doing a lot of this over here at Entrata now. We're trying to raise, the expectation and laying the foundation for like how it's the expectation to communicate. So we don't have to spend 14 days in a meeting, you know what I mean, to communicate context so that we can, spend a lot of that time getting to the root of what we're trying to solve and everybody knows it. There's no more ambiguity in that. So it's a lot of fun laying that foundation now.
Absolutely. So let's make that transition. So now that you're a couple months in to your director of product role
Yeah.
at Entrata, um, what it what has been, I guess, what's the transition been like going from kind of individual
Yeah.
contributor to now leading a group of individual contributors?
I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have any sense of imposter syndrome whenever I came over here. And I'm sure, I mean, I've listened to your podcast for a long time. And again, really big fan, really love what you're doing here. And I've heard product leaders talk, product leaders, there's that word. I've heard directors of products, I've heard product managers and VPs that have made the transitions along the ladder. And the transition's been interesting because for me personally, that's all I can really speak to is that I've always thought of myself as that individual contributor that's going to really work specifically with my little three-legged stool of product design and engineering, and we're gonna solve our problems. And occasionally I would get the opportunity to take a step into strategic thinking and maybe make some roadmaps out and kind of think about what the next quarter is going to look like. If we're lucky, we'd look at the quarter. We might just be looking at like the next 3 weeks. But I think my last boss that I had at Jetty, her name was Lori, and she really was that mind that really helped elevate and prepare me for that. So the last year of my time at Jetty was, I think, really setting me up for success in this role because Lori was really able to remove me from all of that execution daily task and let me focus on that strategic thinking and focus on what it meant to actually think about a vision and what we're trying to do with in our pillar of the organization and why it's important so that we can tell the whole story within that. And a lot of people lose that. I think they think about, oh, well, this is what we're doing and here's why, but they don't think about it in concept of their company and how that story flows and how you as a pillar within that can uphold your part of the story. And that helps the next pillar, which helps the next pillar. And I think that was the hardest part was getting over the imposter syndrome, frankly, but the transition into actually empowering those others to say, let's get you out of that execution mindset too, because you want to take the next step into senior PM. You want to be a director and being able to take what Lori has given me, what Dixie has given me, and internalize that to make people even better. And that's been a fun challenge. I don't really find it. I'll say that it's just been a fun challenge to do that.
Yeah, that's well put. One thing I've noticed is like when we talk about empowered teams from like a leadership perspective in terms of actually managing people,
Yeah,
a lot of times I think we go to the far extreme of let's let them figure out what to do, and then I'll just like coach them in their one-on-one and be there for them if they need support, be air cover for political things.
right. Sure. Yeah.
But I think you hit on something really good earlier that might have been implied, maybe a little more explicit, but is like cascading strategy, right? Like to think strategically, but how does it align not to just what you're trying to do, but to the rest of the organization?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've always appreciated from good leadership is where It's like, here's the corporate strategy, here's how product strategy fits into it, and then this is how it relates to kind of your role. And so you know very specific, like specifically, and then you can take that back to the rest of the product team and say, like, here's our team strategy, but this is how it
Mhm.
ladders up to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it just kind of goes into other like leadership literature that I've read of,
Yeah.
like, people don't hate ambiguity, they hate, or no, people don't hate change, they hate ambiguity.
Exactly.
And so like it helps bring that clarity to like, what are we doing and why are we doing it?
Yeah, and I mean that's true across all facets of the organization. I mean, you could talk about it just in, your Scrum teams. I'm not sure what you guys use, but like if it's a Scrum team and you've got an engineering manager that has a backlog of tickets for their sprint that they're about to bring in, and they have no idea the impact that they're about to have with this on any given project or feature, whatever it is. How do you expect them to be passionate about that? You know what I mean? How do you expect them to understand how that connects to the grander scale? Similarly, if you have a sales team that goes out and says to a customer, yeah, we can build this. We absolutely can. And they come back and you have to say, wait a minute, we've got a backlog of things. This is our prioritized thing, our prioritized list of features and projects that we're going to do. Without that, you don't have that firm foundation that they can understand how you as a product organization are going to work. And that's really when you start getting into product-led strategy about how we can actually think about the future of the quarters. That way everybody's on the same page. So
Absolutely.
a lot of fun.
Yeah, we've never had salespeople sell stuff that doesn't exist, right?
No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing at all.
Cool, man. So I guess on either spectrum, like, open to it. If you,
Yeah.
as you kind of reflect on the last couple of months of leadership or the last few years of product at the IC level, I guess for the listener, take your pick. Is there advice that you would give to, I guess, senior PMs that are looking to make that transition into people leadership? Let's start there. Let's actually hit both. So
Sure.
let's do that one and then go back to IC advice.
Senior PMs that want to make the transition into directorship and be a people leader, if you feel confident that what you're wanting to do is transition out of being an IC, truly being an IC, and really want that transition into people leadership. Before I answer that, a lot of people have this idea that you have to be a director or higher to make money in product management. Like I have to be a director to make the big bucks. I can't be an individual contributor. And I feel like that landscape's changing. Melissa Perry talks a lot about this in product ops. There's a lot of folks out there that a lot of companies try to being one of them that, we're empowering a lot of our ICs to really stick around because they've got that knowledge and they want to be great ICs. So we're doing that too. But if you really want to make that transition from senior PM to directorship, I think one of the things that I would encourage is stay in an industry that you feel confident in. Like if you can actually, for example, I came from multifamily. I'm not jumping over to medical sales and trying to be a director of product. And you're going to get hit up on LinkedIn for people that say, come be a director at this company or this company or this company. And when that happens, you want to set yourself up for success in your lane is my advice. But more another like point two to that would be if you want to be in directorship, fall in love with people and fall in love with the people that are going to be solving that problem. You already love the problem. If you're at the same company, you already love the problem that you're solving. You already love the customers, but you got to fall in love with the people that share a like mind. And from there, you can coach them. You can encourage them. You can challenge them in ways that's going to take them to new heights. You're going to be able to help them think more strategically that gets them out of the day to day, the monotony, and they can actually feel excited to come to work, instead of, and just thinking about it as another day. But that would be my advice to folks that want to become a director.
Yeah, it's funny. As soon as you said that, I started reflecting back on product leaders that I've reported to and how the industry context really helps
Oh yeah, absolutely.
in that transition, right?
Yeah.
That I could debate pros and cons of that,
Yeah,
but
I agree.
it is helpful, especially if you're onboarding like new PMs and
Yeah.
uh,
I
you
mean, I'm
felt
sure you
that.
can be successful as a director of product or VP of product in any industry. I mean, especially if they're operating in the agile Scrum framework. But for me, I've been very blessed to be able to say, stay in this lane for so long, and I could not be happier where I'm at right now.
No, for sure. I definitely see the benefit to it
Yeah.
for sure. So I guess going back to the ICs in your
Yeah.
time being an IC, I guess to level up, because you leveled up in your career pretty quickly.
Yeah, I feel like I have a rocket ship on my back in a lot of ways. I'm not kidding. Like it's been a ride. So, but if I had to like to answer that same question for ICs,
Yeah.
my biggest thing is get comfortable saying no. And I'm not kidding. Like you know, when I was at Jetty specifically as a startup with that 80 some odd people, that talking to my CEO, it would be, yep, absolutely. We'll do a drip campaign right now. You know what I mean? We'll get that out right now. We'll send some emails. And it would take 3 weeks and, you're like, and then engineering teams backed up and design's mad at you because they have to think about all these things. Marketing hasn't even heard of this by the time you want to get it out there. There's a lot of ambiguity and convoluting things going on. And, my advice would be if you're an IC and you want to start thinking strategically, start with saying no. And here's why, because when you say no to taking on something that your design and engineering teams are already stacked on, they don't have any more space, is that you have the ability to say no with data. And here's why we're saying no. Here's why I can't bring this in right now. Is it more important than these other 14 things that I've prioritized? Is it going to drive the business revenue that you want? And if you get the response of, oh, because we need to do it right now because of X, Y, and Z, you can say, actually, we pulled the data. Here's why. Don't absolutely just come out and say no, but just like gather some context, understand why they want to do this, and then present your case for why it shouldn't be happening right now, as opposed to some of these other items. And then as you're doing that, you're building trust with those folks around you, the engineering, the design, the marketing, the sales team, that you're going to support them so that they can support you and they want to see you succeed. And it's just a cycle of really, this is going to sound very cheesy, but a lot of positivity coming in that. So
No,
that's my advice.
absolutely. It's taking the empathy that you have for your users, giving it to your stakeholders and cross-functional partners,
Yeah.
and then at least understanding what they're asking for, but then having the data to make an informed decision of, yes, this is valid, no, it's not, but
Yeah.
being grounded in something solid other than just opinion.
Yes,
I love that
absolutely.
advice.
Absolutely.
Cool, man. So before we go, I would love to know with this rocket ship on your back,
Yeah,
if there's been any books or newsletters or any like resource that's helped you grow in your career that you would point the listeners to. Um,
absolutely.
and then where can people follow your career?
Well, if they're listening to this podcast, they know how I got to where I'm at. I'm not kidding. You've been doing this. I'm going to toot your own horn. I'm going to fluff your pillows for you for a little bit. Is that, you've been doing this podcast to my knowledge when COVID started, like March 2020 ish. And everybody's working from home. They're looking for advice. They're looking how to get forward in their life. They may have even lost a job, you know what I mean? And they're looking for that transition. There's a lot of great sources on Spotify, on these very podcasty channels. And yours is one of them that I would recommend. I would recommend just typing in product management. You're going to see this one as number 2 or 3 on the list because it's that good. What you're doing is incredible for people that want to make that transition. And that's enough fluffing your pillows. But other than that, for me personally, I write a lot. I love long story form writing. So I write on Medium. Medium's where I get a lot of my information. If you follow product management on there, you could also think about like the books that I read. I know there's a few behind me, but these guys are some producty books that I like. But we all read Marty Kagan. If you're looking to become a director, I'd recommend Julie Zoe's Making of a Manager. In Adam Grant, a couple of them out there. Originals is a great book for folks that want to think creatively. But if it were me and it's looking to become a director, for sure. Can I show the book? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know you wrote a book too. We don't have to talk about that. This one's the one that I would recommend for folks that are really want to make that transition from product management to directorship. The Making of a Manager. Fantastic book. Absolutely fantastic.
Okay, well, that's the next one I'm buying from Amazon because I don't have it and I haven't read it. So
absolutely fantastic.
And where can people find your Medium writing? I could link it in the show notes if you want to share it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Is it okay if you hear the clicking and clacking of a keyboard real quick?
Yeah, man, absolutely.
All right. I am on Medium. And what is my profile? I am Eric S. Perkins, I believe is my profile. I will link it to you in the chat. Yep, at Eric S. Perkins.
Okay, so if you're listening, go to the show notes, grab the link, check out Eric's writing, and you could follow his career and his advice and what he's learning along the way on his
Yeah.
medium. Well,
Thank you,
Eric,
sir.
thanks so much for joining me. This has been a pleasure to get to know you more and
Okay.
to reconnect. And I'm really thankful that you reached out.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been a dream come true for me talking to you. So thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate it.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube channel. If you're watching or if you're listening on the podcast, make sure that you rate and review and subscribe or follow if you haven't already. And thanks for joining me this week, and we'll see you next week for another lesson in product management.